The stars stretched endlessly across the void, twinkling coldly like distant eyes watching the galaxy below. On the outer edge of Zathari space, a small human ship glided silently. Its hull, sleek, silver, and far too fragile for the reputation of the cosmos it now dared to enter. Inside, Captain Elias Varan adjusted his uniform and scanned the view screen, his fingers brushing over the worn controls as he studied the strange, alien patterns of energy that marked Zathari territory. He had heard stories. Tales of the Zathari Dominion were whispered across human space, like myths, half-truths wrapped in fear. Their queen, Zyra, ruled with a mind sharper than any blade and a heart colder than the void itself. Entire worlds bent to her will, or vanished entirely. And now, Elias, a human diplomat, had been sent alone to negotiate peace. Elias exhaled slowly, trying to calm the nervous energy buzzing in his chest. He had faced pirates, rogue AI, even the treacherous storms of uncharted space, but nothing like this. Nothing like meeting the legendary Zyra. He reminded himself that humans were not powerless. They had survived against odds no one could imagine. And maybe, just maybe, they could survive the queen of the Zathari. The ship's intercom chimed, pulling him from his thoughts. Captain Varan, the voice of his AI assistant, Lyra, chimed, smooth and even. Approaching Zathari orbital station. Scans show heavy defenses. The Queen's fleet is fully active. Elias nodded, although Lyra could not see him. Understood. Prepare docking sequence. And Lyra, stay sharp. We are not here to fight. But I want every system ready if they decide to test me. Yes, Captain. All systems are optimized for diplomatic approach, Lyra replied. The station grew larger on the view screen. A massive structure of black metal and glowing blue energy, orbiting a dead, rocky planet. Its towers stretched like jagged teeth into space, and the air shimmered with defensive energy shields. The kind of place humans called intimidating. Elias called it a test of courage. As the docking clamps latched with a hiss, he felt a twinge of anxiety. He had not come to conquer or destroy. He had come to negotiate, to prove that humans could speak with aliens, that humans could be trusted as equals, even in the face of overwhelming power. The docking bay opened, and Elias stepped out into the hall. The air was heavier here, charged with alien energy, and every surface reflected a blue glow that made human eyes strain. Figures moved with purpose, tall, sinewy, and unmistakably Zathari. Their skin shimmered faintly, almost metallic, and their eyes were an impossible shade of violet. Every step they took seemed precise, as though the very ground obeyed them. At the far end of the hall, a massive doorway opened. Behind it, seated on a throne of dark crystal and swirling energy, was Zyra, the alien queen. She was taller than any human could be, her form elegant yet intimidating. Her skin glimmered like polished obsidian, and her eyes were sharp, cruel, and intelligent. She regarded Elias like a predator studying a curious insect, her gaze unwavering and sharp. "You are human," she said, her voice echoing, cold yet musical. "The first to enter my chamber without fear. Or perhaps, the first to be foolish enough." Elias straightened. "I am Captain Elias Varan. I represent the United Earth Federation. I come with an offer of peace, and with hope that our two species can avoid further conflict." Zyra laughed, a sound that was not warm, not friendly, but chilling. It bounced off the walls like a blade cutting through air. "Peace? From humans? You amuse me. You believe a single human can negotiate with the Zathari Dominion? Tell me, Captain, do you think your frail kind can truly understand power?" Elias swallowed but met her gaze. "I believe humans understand courage, and perhaps courage is the most important power there is, even for the strongest of species." Zyra leaned forward slightly, intrigued. Humans rarely spoke with such directness, such boldness. They were usually obedient, fearful, or expendable. Yet this one was different. She could sense it immediately. "And you think courage can stop my fleets, or sway the decisions of a queen?" she asked, her tone sharp, challenging. Elias's lips pressed into a firm line. "Not stop, not sway. But perhaps show that we are worthy of consideration. That humans are not merely weak or reckless. That we can be partners." Zyra's eyes narrowed. She studied him, the curves of his face, the way his body did not tremble even under her intense gaze. She remembered how often humans had been underestimated by other species, and how often that underestimation had cost them dearly. And yet, she felt a strange curiosity, a stirring she had never felt before. "You speak of partnership," she said slowly, "and yet you are human. Your biology is incompatible with mine. Your species is fragile. Your lifespan is brief. And yet, you dare speak of joining with the Zathari?" Elias met her eyes without flinching. "Perhaps the impossible is only impossible until someone dares it. Perhaps our differences are not weaknesses, but strengths, if we understand them properly." Zyra laughed again, louder this time, a sound that shook the crystalline walls. "Impossible? You dare to think a human could ever create life with a Zathari? You are amusing, Captain. Truly. A human child with a Zathari? Ha! The thought alone is preposterous." The room was silent for a moment. Even the Zathari attendants seemed to pause, unsure whether the Queen's laughter was a warning or amusement. And yet, in the back of Zyra's mind, a tiny spark of curiosity flickered. The idea was impossible. Yes. But the audacity of this human, it was remarkable. Could such a creature so fragile, so limited, truly challenge her understanding of the universe? Elias's voice broke the silence. "Perhaps, Your Majesty, the impossible is only impossible until it happens." Zyra's eyes widened slightly, and she leaned back. She was not used to being challenged, not intellectually, not emotionally. Most beings either feared her, obeyed her, or died. And yet, this human was neither fearful nor obedient. He spoke with honesty, with bravery, and with a strange hope that made her pulse quicken, a feeling she had long forgotten she could feel. "Very well, Captain," she said finally, her voice a mixture of amusement and warning. "You may remain under my observation. We shall see whether humans are as clever as they claim. But remember this. Do not mistake my curiosity for trust. One wrong step, and your species will be history." Elias bowed slightly. "Understood, Your Majesty. I am here to prove that humans can earn trust. And perhaps, friendship." Zyra's eyes glimmered with a strange light. Friendship? The word was meaningless in her culture. The Zathari understood loyalty, obedience, hierarchy, but friendship? She had long ago abandoned such notions, and yet, she found herself pondering the human's words. Perhaps there was something in them worth exploring. Over the following days, Elias was escorted through the station, observing Zathari culture and technology. Every corridor, every laboratory, every starship he saw reinforced what he already knew. The Zathari were brilliant, disciplined, and terrifyingly efficient. But he also observed subtle things, their curiosity, their art, their moments of quiet reflection. Even in a species so seemingly alien, there was complexity. Zyra continued to watch him. Sometimes from afar, sometimes in meetings where she posed questions that tested his intelligence, his moral judgment, and his patience. She expected fear, hesitation, maybe flattery. What she did not expect was resilience, insight, and courage. And slowly, she found herself intrigued. One evening, as the twin suns of the nearby system dipped below the horizon of the rocky planet beneath the station, Zyra and Elias found themselves alone in a viewing chamber. Stars stretched endlessly before them, the void like a silent sea. "You humans are remarkable," Zyra said quietly. "Despite your weaknesses, your fragility. There is something in you that other species lack. You adapt. You endure. You fight not only for survival, but for hope. Elias glanced at her, surprised by the sudden shift from the usual sharpness. We do what we must to survive, he said simply. And we try to live with purpose, even if it seems small in a universe so vast. Zyra studied him. Perhaps there was truth in his words. Perhaps there was something valuable in the human spirit. Something she had never encountered in the calculated perfection of her own species. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where humans and Zathari were not enemies. Yet, even as that thought crossed her mind, she laughed a soft, incredulous sound. A human, daring to dream of joining with the Zathari. And even more, imagining we could share something biological. Ha! Impossible. Truly impossible. Elias smiled faintly, unshaken. Sometimes, the impossible is only the beginning. Zyra looked at him for a long moment, feeling something she could not name. Curiosity, wonder, perhaps even a tiny spark of respect. And as she turned her gaze back to the stars, she wondered if the universe had just begun a story she had never imagined, one that might change everything. Little did she know, the universe had indeed begun something extraordinary. Something that would challenge everything she believed about power, life, and the strength hidden in the most unexpected forms. Weeks passed since Captain Elias Varan had arrived at the Zathari station. Each day, he observed the alien culture, learning, listening, and quietly demonstrating human resilience. Zyra, the alien queen, watched him with a mixture of amusement, curiosity, and though she would never admit it, interest. His presence had unsettled the perfection of her ordered life, and yet she could not dismiss him. It began with a small, almost imperceptible change. Zyra noticed subtle shifts in her own body, changes no Zathari queen had ever experienced before. At first, she ignored them. She was the ruler of a galactic empire. Her mind was focused on strategy, politics, and control, not the strange sensations she felt deep within herself. But the changes grew harder to dismiss. A strange warmth, a new rhythm in her energy, and an awareness she had never known. She consulted her personal attendants, the most skilled scientists and medics in the Zathari Empire, expecting rational explanations. Yet their analysis left her more bewildered than reassured. "Your Majesty," the chief scientist said, voice trembling slightly, "all indicators suggest you are pregnant." Zyra froze. The word itself seemed alien on her tongue. "Pregnant?" she repeated, a mixture of incredulity and disbelief in her voice. "That is impossible. My biology, it cannot." "You are certain," the scientist continued, "that this is not a medical error. We have repeated all scans, the energy readings, the growth patterns, everything points to pregnancy, and yet the source is not entirely clear." Zyra's mind raced. Impossible. Inconceivable. Humans were biologically incompatible with Zathari. She had laughed at the very idea just weeks ago. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. She felt a flicker of something unfamiliar uncertainty. She, the queen who controlled galaxies, who could manipulate energy and life itself, now faced a reality she could not dominate, and with it came curiosity. Meanwhile, news of the Queen's condition spread through the Dominion, though carefully controlled. Whispers of fear and fascination emerged among the Zathari elite. Many were loyalists, devoted to Zyra's rule and terrified of change. Others saw opportunity. If the Queen was truly pregnant by a human, this child could reshape the Empire or even threaten it. Back in the human world, intelligence networks detected the unusual activity at the Zathari station. Captain Varan learned, through discreet channels, that the Queen's health was shifting in ways that humans had never witnessed. He understood immediately what it could mean, though he did not speak of it openly. The possibilities were extraordinary and dangerous. Zyra, however, refused to show vulnerability. She continued her duties with her usual precision, her commanding presence unwavering. But alone, she allowed herself to explore the reality of what was happening. The child inside her represented a union of two species, something thought biologically impossible. It was a potential bridge between humans and Zathari. Or perhaps a force that could destabilize the universe itself. As days turned to weeks, Zyra began to feel the child more distinctly. Strange thoughts entered her mind, thoughts she had never allowed herself to entertain. What if this child could change the Empire for the better? What if humans were not as weak as she had believed? Could this tiny life, a human-alien hybrid, be a symbol of something greater? She observed Captain Varan more closely during his visits. Every interaction became a study, not of diplomacy or strategy, but of character. Humans were unpredictable. They could act with courage, with ingenuity, with compassion, and though Zathari often dismissed emotions as weakness, Zyra found herself captivated by these traits. Elias, too, noticed the subtle changes in the Queen. There was a new softness in her eyes, a shift in her manner when they were alone. But he understood the danger. The Zathari Empire was vast and ruthless. Curiosity could be deadly. Still, he could not help but feel a quiet hope that the impossible might be possible. One evening, Zyra summoned him to a private chamber overlooking a glowing nebula. The stars spilled across the viewport like scattered diamonds, casting an ethereal light. "You are aware," she began, her voice measured, "that my situation is unusual and dangerous." Elias nodded, choosing his words carefully. "I am aware, Your Majesty, and I believe that whatever is happening, it could be something extraordinary, something that may connect our species in ways no one has imagined." Zyra turned her gaze to the nebula, thinking. The child inside her was more than an anomaly, it was a possibility. The potential for understanding, for alliance, for something new in the universe. And yet, there was fear. Fear from her advisors, fear from her empire, fear from within herself. "Your people," she said finally. "They would never accept this. They would see it as a threat. Some may even plot against me, against the child. I must protect it." "But how?" Elias stepped closer, his voice calm. "Then we must find a way to protect it together. Trust must grow, Your Majesty. And I believe it can. Not through power, but through understanding." For the first time in centuries, Zyra felt a flicker of uncertainty, of vulnerability. She was the Queen, the ruler, the most feared being in the galaxy. And yet, the presence of this child, this impossible life, had touched something inside her, a sense of responsibility, and perhaps even hope. The next weeks were a delicate balance. Zyra continued her duties with the Dominion, attending councils, managing fleets, and maintaining the image of unshakable strength. At the same time, she monitored her condition, the child's development, and the subtle changes in her own energy. Scientists were fascinated. The child's growth rate was unlike anything known to Zathari or human biology. Its abilities seemed to surpass expectations, hinting at potential intelligence and adaptability beyond either species. Some Zathari whispered that the child could be the key to evolution itself. Others saw only danger. And then came the first direct threat. A faction within the Zathari elite, loyal to the old ways, viewed the Queen's pregnancy as a betrayal of Zathari purity. They whispered in hidden chambers, plotting in secret. They believed the child could weaken the Empire, disrupt the hierarchy, and challenge centuries of tradition. Zyra was aware of them. She had ruled through fear, strategy, and intellect. Now she faced a new kind of challenge. Protection of a life that could not be controlled. A life that was inherently unpredictable. The stakes were higher than any battle she had ever fought. Captain Varan, meanwhile, observed from his human perspective. He understood the political and cultural tensions at play. He knew the danger, and he knew the opportunity. The child, if allowed to survive and grow, could become a symbol, a bridge between two species. Proof that the impossible was not only possible, but transformative. In private, Zyra allowed herself rare moments of reflection. She thought of the human courage she had witnessed, the persistence, the determination, the hope. She realized that the traits humans possess, traits she had once dismissed as weaknesses, were in fact powerful, resilient, and enduring. And she began to consider a future that had once been unthinkable. A future where humans and Zathari could coexist, where the child could become a symbol of unity rather than fear. But danger lingered. The faction of Zathari loyalists grew bolder. Intelligence reports indicated that they were planning to act, to challenge the Queen's authority, and perhaps even to threaten the child directly. Zyra knew she would have to be vigilant, to anticipate every move, and to protect this life at all costs. She began to involve Captain Varan more actively, sharing strategic information and seeking his insights on diplomacy and human resilience. He offered ideas, suggestions, and perspectives that she had never considered. Slowly, a fragile partnership formed, not just as diplomat and queen, but as two beings working together to protect something extraordinary. The child, meanwhile, continued to develop within Zyra. Its presence was a constant reminder of the unexpected, the extraordinary, and the transformative. Every heartbeat, every subtle movement, was a testament to the potential of life, courage, and hope in the universe. And in quiet moments, when the station was still and the stars stretched endlessly before them, Zyra allowed herself to imagine a universe changed by this child. A universe where the Zathari could learn, grow, and adapt. A universe where humans were not merely survivors, but partners in shaping the future. The impossible had begun to take shape. And though Zyra did not yet know the full consequences, she understood one truth. The presence of this child would change everything. The Queen, feared across the galaxy, found herself facing a new reality. One that no strategy, no weapon, and no empire could prepare her for. She would have to navigate politics, loyalty, fear, and hope, all while protecting a life that was unprecedented, extraordinary, and entirely unpredictable. And Captain Elias Varan, the human who had dared to enter her empire with only courage and conviction, would be her companion in this journey, a witness to the impossible, and a partner in the birth of something truly remarkable. The universe, vast and indifferent, seemed to pause for a moment, as if it too recognized the significance of what was happening. A human alien child, thought impossible, was growing quietly within the Queen of the Zathari. And in that quiet, fragile moment, the seeds of a new era were planted. The Zathari Empire had never known uncertainty like this. For centuries, it had been a model of order, strength, and precision, with the Queen's will shaping every corner of its vast reaches. Yet now, Zyra, the alien queen herself, was at the center of a phenomenon no Zathari had ever imagined. The child growing inside her was unlike anything in the galaxy. Early scans had shown unusual energy patterns. But as days passed, it became clear the being was extraordinary. Its mind seemed to process information faster than any known species. Its heartbeat resonated with a rhythm that harmonized oddly with Zyra's own energy, almost as if it were attuned not just to her body, but to her mind and her essence. Zyra noticed the first signs herself. In moments of stillness, she could feel the child reacting to her thoughts, almost as though it understood her emotions. When she experienced anger or stress, it stirred restlessly. When she focused on calm or hope, it seemed to relax. She had ruled countless worlds, conquered entire fleets, and manipulated life itself, but nothing had prepared her for the feeling of another intelligence responding to her innermost thoughts. Captain Elias Varan continued his careful observation, always present, yet never intrusive. He had been allowed to remain near the Queen, partially as an observer, and partially because the Zathari feared the potential diplomatic fallout if he were removed. He watched her with awe, recognizing both the magnitude of her responsibility and the extraordinary nature of the life growing within her. "The child is remarkable," Elias said quietly during one of their private discussions in the observation chamber. The twin stars outside bathed the room in a gentle glow. Its mind. It's processing things no human or Zathari could. It's as if it's learning from both of you simultaneously. Zyra looked out at the stars, considering his words. Yes, she replied, but that knowledge is not yet fully formed. It is growing, adapting, becoming. And I sense that it is more than a simple combination of our species. It may redefine what life can be. The Queen's advisors, however, did not see it as a miracle, they saw it as a threat. A faction of high-ranking Zathari, loyal to the Empire's strict traditions, began whispering in shadowed corridors. They feared the child would weaken the Queen's authority, disrupt the hierarchy, and challenge centuries of Zathari purity. Some even spoke of removing the Queen from power. Though none dared act openly, Zyra was aware of the whispers. She had faced threats before. But this was different. This challenge was not merely political or military, it was existential. She had to protect not only her rule but also the life inside her. And unlike fleets or armies, this was a life that could not be controlled through force alone. Elias stepped carefully into the conversation. Your Majesty, if I may. Humans have a saying. The greatest strength comes not from domination, but from connection. Perhaps the child could become that connection. A bridge between your people and mine, rather than a threat. Zyra considered him silently. The concept was foreign to her species. Zathari's strength came from control, from precision, from predictability. But this child, this life, defied predictability, and perhaps that was its power. Over the following days, Zyra's awareness of the child deepened. She noticed subtle shifts in her energy, almost as if the child was influencing her thoughts and moods. When she felt fear or doubt, it seemed to respond with calm. When she felt hope, it responded with curiosity. The connection grew stronger each day, filling her with both wonder and apprehension. The Zathari scientists were equally fascinated. They conducted tests, carefully monitoring the child's development. Results astounded even them. The child's neural growth was unparalleled, and its adaptability suggested intelligence far beyond expectations. Some speculated it could solve problems, understand languages, and even predict outcomes in ways no single species could. Despite these discoveries, danger loomed. The faction opposed to the Queen's decisions grew bolder, plotting in secret. They saw the child as a challenge to Zathari tradition, a flaw in the perfection of the Empire. And they were not alone. Some distant systems viewed the situation as an opportunity to rebel, to weaken the Dominion by exploiting the Queen's vulnerability. Zyra acted with caution. She strengthened security, repositioned her fleets, and initiated subtle political maneuvers to isolate potential threats. Yet she also found herself relying on Elias in ways she had not anticipated. His insight into human diplomacy, strategy, and adaptability became invaluable. Not only to protect the child, but to navigate the complex web of Zathari politics. One evening, as the stars shimmered beyond the chamber's massive window, Zyra spoke quietly to Elias. Do you understand what this child could mean? Elias nodded, choosing his words carefully. I think I do, Your Majesty. It could change everything, our understanding of life, our understanding of the universe, even the relationships between species. It could inspire hope or fear. But it is up to you to guide that path. Zyra's eyes softened, a rare display of emotion for the Queen. And if the Empire rejects it, if they see it as a threat instead of a gift, then we protect it, Elias said firmly, no matter what. And we show them, through example, that this child is not a threat, but a bridge, a proof, that the impossible can exist, and that courage, understanding, and empathy can shape the future. The Queen remained silent, contemplating his words. For centuries, she had relied on power, fear, and control. Now, she faced something she could not dominate, something that demanded trust, patience, and hope. And in that moment, she realized that the child was not only a new life, it was a lesson. As the pregnancy advanced, the child's abilities became more pronounced. It responded to light, energy, and sound in ways that were astonishing. Scientists recorded neural patterns that suggested it could perceive multiple layers of reality simultaneously. It was as if the child could process experiences from both human and Zathari perspectives, blending them into a unique understanding of the universe. Zyra marveled at these developments. She had always valued intelligence and strength, but this child possessed both, fused with something entirely new: empathy, adaptability, and potential that transcended either species. The Queen could feel a connection, a silent communication, growing stronger each day. Yet danger remained close. The faction opposing her authority had begun to move openly. There were subtle attacks on communication systems, unexplained malfunctions in fleet operations, and whispered threats in council meetings. The Queen understood that they feared what they could not control, and she knew that the child, innocent, small, and powerful, was at the center of their anxiety. Elias offered guidance, drawing from human history and strategy. "The child represents hope," he said. "But hope is fragile. We must protect it, but we must also show the Empire its value. Fear is born from misunderstanding. We can change that." Zyra nodded, her mind working faster than ever. She reorganized her council, appointed loyal commanders to critical positions, and implemented new protocols to safeguard the child. She began to plan not only for the immediate danger, but for the long-term future. The child's survival and growth were intertwined with the fate of the entire empire. Amid these preparations, Zyra allowed herself rare moments of reflection. She thought about the human courage she had witnessed, the determination that allowed them to survive in a harsh universe. She thought about her own role as queen, not only as a ruler, but as a protector. And she considered the possibilities: a future where humans and Zathari could coexist, where the child could embody the best of both species. Elias remained a steady presence, offering insight, strategy, and perspective. But he also represented something else, a reminder that trust could exist across species, that collaboration was possible even in the most unlikely circumstances. And slowly, a fragile bond of mutual respect and understanding grew between the two leaders. Then, one night, the unexpected happened. The child, for the first time, reacted to its surroundings in a conscious, deliberate way. Zyra felt it move in a rhythm that mirrored her thoughts. It responded to her focus, her energy, even her intentions. She realized that this being was not only aware but beginning to learn actively, to engage with the universe in ways that neither human nor Zathari had anticipated. "The child is learning faster than we imagined," Elias said, eyes wide with amazement. "It's not just growing, it's thinking. It's understanding." Zyra's heart, or the closest approximation her species had to human emotion, stirred. She felt a profound responsibility and a strange pride. For centuries, she had ruled with intellect and strategy. Now, she faced a new challenge: nurturing, guiding, and protecting a life that could shape the destiny of the galaxy. Weeks passed, and the child's abilities continued to evolve. It began responding to energy patterns, manipulating small fields of power in the womb, and even displaying early forms of communication through thought and sensation. Scientists recorded data furiously, but no one fully understood the implications. The child was not merely a hybrid, it was something new, something that represented the potential of evolution itself. The opposition within the Empire, however, did not pause. The factions' movements became bolder, more direct. Attempts were made to infiltrate secure chambers, manipulate communications, and influence council decisions. The Queen responded with precision, deploying loyalists and securing the child's environment. She realized that the survival of the unborn being depended not only on her strength but on her ability to inspire loyalty, understanding, and trust in those around her. Elias, observing these events, understood the delicate balance of power. He advised caution, patience, and careful diplomacy. "The Empire fears what it does not understand," he said. "We must guide them, show them, and protect the child. Only then can this life become a symbol of hope rather than fear." Zyra considered his words. She had faced countless threats, wars, and rebellions, but nothing had required patience and subtlety like this. The child represented both vulnerability and potential, and every decision she made could shape the future of two species. And so, she resolved. She would protect the child. She would guide its development. And she would challenge the fears of her people, showing them that strength was not only in domination, but in understanding, courage, and hope. For the first time in her long and calculated life, Zyra felt a mixture of uncertainty and anticipation. The child inside her was more than a symbol, it was a force for change, a potential bridge between worlds, and a living testament to the unexpected power of life. And in that quiet, controlled chamber, amidst the hum of the Zathari station and the infinite stars beyond, Zyra and Elias prepared for what would come next. The universe was watching. The empire was shifting, and the child, though not yet born, had already begun to shape the destiny of worlds. The galaxy had always been vast and unpredictable, but nothing in Zyra's long reign had prepared her for the changes that came with the child growing inside her. At first, the signs were subtle, slight shifts in her energy, a new awareness she could not explain, and fleeting moments of restlessness. But as the days passed, it became clear that this was not an ordinary pregnancy. The child's development was extraordinary. Zathari scientists, the most advanced in the known universe, ran scans and tests that produced results beyond comprehension, the unborn being displayed neural growth far exceeding expectations, integrating the biological strengths of both Zathari and human life. It was as if two species had merged into something entirely new, a hybrid with intelligence, adaptability, and potential no one had ever imagined. Zyra felt the child's presence as a constant, subtle awareness. When she was calm, it seemed to respond in harmony, pulsating gently with her own energy. When she felt stress or tension, it reacted restlessly, and in rare moments of reflection, she could sense the child's curiosity, an awareness that reached beyond instinct, beyond biology. Captain Elias Varan observed these developments quietly. He was allowed closer access than any human had ever had to the Zathari Queen, and he watched with awe and careful caution. He understood the stakes. This child could be the bridge between humans and Zathari, a living testament to what collaboration could achieve. But he also knew that it was a vulnerability. Many within the Zathari Empire saw only danger, not potential. Zyra, for her part, was both fascinated and cautious. Her thoughts often returned to the impossible nature of the situation. The child was conceived in a way her science had always deemed improbable. Yet here it was, proof that the universe still held mysteries even she could not fully control. The child's mind is developing faster than expected, Elias said during one of their private discussions in the observation chamber. The stars stretched beyond the viewport like scattered diamonds, their light reflecting in his thoughtful eyes. It's not just growing. It's learning, absorbing information in ways that no human or Zathari could. Zyra's gaze was distant, thoughtful. Yes, I sense it too. It's awareness. It is not instinctive alone. It seems to respond to thought, emotion, even intention. A part of me wonders if it is communicating. Elias considered her words carefully. Perhaps it is. Perhaps it's learning from both of you simultaneously, building an understanding that neither species alone could achieve. It could become a force that unites, if guided carefully. Guiding it, however, was no simple matter. Zathari politics were already tense. A faction of the council opposed to Zyra's decisions had begun to see the pregnancy as a threat to the empire. They feared the child's existence could destabilize centuries of tradition and hierarchy. Whispers of rebellion circulated in secret chambers. Subtle acts of sabotage appeared in the fleets, and careful plots were laid to undermine the queen. Zyra responded with precision. She reorganized her security forces, strengthened her personal guard, and implemented surveillance measures to monitor potential threats. But the danger was not merely physical, it was political, social, and psychological. Protecting the child required a delicate balance of strategy, diplomacy, and insight into the fears of her people. Elias worked alongside her, offering perspective from his own species. "The Empire fears what it cannot understand," he said one evening. "They will react with hostility if they do not see the child's potential as a bridge. We must show them its value. Carefully. One step at a time." Zyra nodded slowly. She had always ruled through intellect and force, yet now patience, persuasion, and subtlety became her most important tools. The child represented not just a new life, but a challenge to centuries of tradition, a chance for the Empire to evolve, if it could overcome fear. As the pregnancy progressed, the child's abilities became more remarkable. Early tests showed it could detect energy patterns, respond to stimuli, and even manipulate small fields of power within the womb. Zathari scientists recorded neural signals that indicated comprehension, curiosity, and adaptive learning. No one had ever seen anything like it. Zyra began to feel a deep, almost maternal connection to the child. It was not merely the bond of life growing within her, it was a recognition of the extraordinary potential that lay within. The child represented hope, not only for the future of her empire but also for the possibility of unity between species. Yet fear lingered. The faction opposed to her rule grew more daring. Small attacks on communication networks, subtle sabotage in fleet operations, and clandestine attempts to influence council members were reported daily. Zyra understood that they feared what they could not control, and in their fear, they would take any action necessary. One day, Elias observed an incident that left even him uneasy. A group of rebels had attempted to infiltrate a research lab where the child's growth was monitored. Security forces intercepted them, but the audacity of the attempt revealed the depth of opposition within the Empire. "They are growing bolder," Elias said, "and more dangerous. We cannot underestimate them." Zyra's response was measured. "No, but their fear is also an opportunity. If we can demonstrate the child's value, its potential, perhaps even their fear can be turned into understanding. The child may teach the Empire what I cannot alone." The Queen's thoughts often returned to the human diplomat. Elias's presence was both reassuring and challenging. His perspective on courage, diplomacy, and morality offered insights she could not access on her own. Slowly, a fragile trust developed between them, not based on convenience or obligation, but on shared purpose. Together, they worked to protect the child and guide its development. Then came a breakthrough. During a routine scan, the scientists observed a remarkable phenomenon. The child had begun responding to Zyra's thoughts in a deliberate way. When she focused on calming energy, the child's neural signals synchronized with her own. When she experienced curiosity or wonder, the child mirrored it in small movements detectable on the sensors. "It's conscious," Elias whispered, eyes wide with amazement. "It's not only growing, it's aware, learning, and reacting intentionally." Zyra felt a profound sense of responsibility. For centuries, she had wielded power and influence, yet nothing compared to the task of nurturing this extraordinary life. It was not merely a political or military challenge, it was an evolution of purpose. She had to protect, guide, and prepare the child for a universe that would test it at every turn. As days passed, the child's abilities grew. It began to perceive patterns of energy, manipulate small fields, and even influence the flow of biological signals within the womb. Scientists recorded astonishing data, suggesting that the child could integrate information from both human and Zathari biology, forming a unique understanding of its surroundings before even being born. Zyra marveled at this. The child was more than a hybrid, it was an entirely new form of life. It embodied resilience, intelligence, and adaptability, the best qualities of both species. She realized that the child could challenge not only the fears of the Zathari but also the limitations of the galaxy itself. But the opposition was relentless. The faction within the Empire saw the child's growth and potential as a direct threat. They attempted to sway council members, manipulate fleets, and disrupt communications. Every move had to be calculated. Every decision could mean the difference between survival and disaster. Elias offered guidance from a human perspective. "Fear drives people to extremes," he said. "If we can show them that the child is not a threat, but a symbol of progress, we can protect it. But we must act carefully. Patience is our ally." Zyra considered his words. She had ruled through strength, but now wisdom, foresight, and empathy became her most critical tools. The child was the living embodiment of the impossible, and its survival depended not only on protection but on understanding. In quiet moments, Zyra reflected on the nature of life, courage, and hope. She thought about the human spirit, the persistence, ingenuity, and compassion that Elias embodied. She realized that these traits, so often dismissed as weakness by the Zathari, were sources of immense strength, and she understood that the child could inherit these qualities, merging them with the formidable abilities of the Zathari to create something unprecedented. Weeks turned into months. The child's presence became more pronounced, more tangible. It responded not only to Zyra's energy, but also to subtle environmental changes. Scientists documented responses to light, sound, and energy patterns, revealing intelligence that surpassed expectations. The child's growth was both biological and cognitive, a synthesis of two species that hinted at the future of evolution itself. Amid these developments, Zyra and Elias grew closer in understanding. Though never romantically, their bond was one of shared purpose, mutual respect, and a commitment to protect a life that represented hope for the galaxy. Together, they developed strategies to safeguard the child, navigate political tensions, and prepare for the day when the new being would enter the universe fully. The opposition continued, but Zyra was ready. She had consolidated power, secured loyalty, and created contingency plans for every threat. Yet she knew that the child's potential was the greatest defense. Its presence, intelligence, and growing awareness were forces that could inspire understanding and reshape fear into hope. As the stars glimmered beyond the station, Zyra allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The child inside her was more than a miracle. It was a symbol of possibility, a reminder that the impossible could exist, that courage and understanding could bridge worlds, and that life itself could evolve beyond the limits of expectation. And so, the Queen prepared. She would face the coming challenges with wisdom and strength. She would protect the child at all costs. And she would guide the Empire toward a future that none had imagined. A future in which humans and Zathari might not only coexist, but thrive together. The universe waited, vast and indifferent. But within the walls of the Zathari station, something extraordinary was growing, a child between worlds, destined to shape the fate of two species, and perhaps the galaxy itself.